at University of Pikesville in political science has joined us tonight. Tyler, thank you so much for joining the station.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
So, not a lot of news happening this week, is there? Nothing big out of the ordinary. You know, it was really hard to put together a show. It felt like we had nothing to talk about. Anything stand out to you guys?
No, it's all equal. Nothing stands out. It's all equally disturbing.
Equally disturbing. All right, well, let's jump into it. There is a lot going on out there. And so for our first segment, we're going to talk about the foreign policy that America and the world is going through right now. So we've got the Monroe Doctrine to the Donroe Doctrine. We're going to talk about Greenland, Iran, and Venezuela. So right now, Donald Trump is all about annexing, taking over Greenland, whichever way he can. Stephen Miller's out on the news broadcast talking about how we're going to exert American force. We need it for national security reasons, apparently, or Russia and China is going to scoop it up. Over in Iran, they are on the midst of a revolution right now, and there's big things happening there. And then, of course, we've got Venezuela, which we talked about a little bit on the show last week. We had a special operations. We took out the dictator that was there. We brought him back to the United States, and he is facing trial. But meanwhile, the administration seems to be in control of Venezuela. So what does this all mean for regular citizens? How does this affect us? And what is the role of Congress in all of this? I'm going to get to our guest first. I'm going to let you pick which one, Greenland, Iran, or Venezuela do you want to talk about first?
Greenland, I guess. I don't know. This are horrible choices. But.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to know about that. I think I know your answer. Should America be taking Greenland over?
No. To me, this is just like one of those really bizarre ideas because it's not as though Denmark is a country that doesn't like us, that never helps us out. They're probably actually one of the most helpful countries in Europe. And so we can use Greenland basically for everything we need, historically have used Greenland for everything we need, without conquering it, upsetting all kinds of our allies, and also without taking on a lot of the very serious public policy problems that Greenland has internally that I really don't think Donald Trump or anybody in the United States wants a piece of.
Walter, what do you think?
Yeah. Already our friend, already have bases there, probably would give us whatever we asked for. All we have to do is ask. I think this is kind of what Fareed Zakaria's whole piece was about that you sent us. You know, being a shakedown doctrine. Being a shakedown artist, especially. Is Greenland in the Western Hemisphere? I don't think that's part of the Donroe Doctrine, is it?
Yeah, it's in the Western.
You can draw hemispheres on any longitudinal line, so yeah, technically you can make it whatever hemisphere you want.
It is in the Western Hemisphere. I think FDR had something about that at that time.
Okay, all right. So but this is it's a strong, competent, constitutional republic driven ally who basically helped us invent the stock market and capital. So it seems like a not something to throw away lightly, and obviously he is not making friends in his rhetoric. And so I think the question is, well, is it just rhetoric or is he being serious? And he just maybe he just doesn't understand. Maybe he has an idiot whispering in his ear.
Stephen Miller?
Well, I would
probably
not
got several.
idiot.
Well, to be fair, Stephen Miller is not an idiot. He's a very, very intelligent man. The problem is he uses intelligence for the wrong purposes.
Right.
Yeah. And I think my point would be, or something I was just listening to, it was a teacher of like 40 years, and he was talking about what it takes to teach. And sometimes to be the teacher, you actually don't want to be somebody's friend, and you might take a position that you actually don't believe, right? And I think that's also part of the art of negotiation. And so I think Trump frequently does take kind of weird, crazy positions that he, absolutely does not mean. And so I think time will tell whether or not this is that. And hopefully he will apologize and move on, because it seems needlessly like a needless fumble. Yeah. So.
Roger.
Yeah. Well, it's not our cheese, right? People have to make the decision. The people of Greenland are the ones affected by the decision. They have to make the decision. And it kind of sounds to me like public opinion is against it. Therefore, you have to move on and look somewhere else for your gold, right? Otherwise, you're just a bully.
Yeah, I wrote a piece about this in The Hill, I don't know, back when Trump, back in like February, I think it was, last year. And, my argument was, there's no reason we can't have Greenland if Greenland wants to be part of the United States. And if Greenland wants to be part of the United States, it should become a actual state, right? And I think
that's important.
Right. And it should go through the constitutional process. And most importantly, it should go through Congress, right? Like Congress is the first branch. Obviously, our listeners know that. That's where things are supposed to go. And we've made other mistakes, like Puerto Rico, right? Like Puerto Rico should be a state, right? And so we shouldn't have territories. We should have states. And I think Fareed's opening monologue from his show this weekend, and along with his op-ed that he wrote in the Washington Post, he makes the argument that, the United States has been a unique empire, if you will, world hegemon, and that it tries to translate raw strength into something that others can accept. And he says rules and institutions. And I think that's important. And I think that, as we transition, we zoom out, we've got the Greenland issue, we've got the Venezuela issue, and then we've got the Iran issue, right? Iran is going through a revolution. It makes me think back to the 1848. I'm reading that book right over there, 1848, where there was just the year of revolution in Europe. And, as I'm going through this, the words representative and Republican keep on coming up over and over again, because a lot of these countries, what they wanted was self-government. They wanted the opportunity to write their own rules. And ultimately, that's what happens in oppressive regimes. They become so, absolute that there's a group of people that are just fed up that they start a revolution. And what the United States has been able to do is to share their power with other countries to help bring about different types of self-governments. It hasn't always been successful, as Fareed pointed out in his monologue, but that doesn't mean that we're not trying to, as John Adams said, to do good and to be good. So Tyler, the situation in Iran, what do you think is going to play out there?
So I'm always kind of skeptic. So I'll just begin that I'm kind of pessimistic about these things. What I hope happens there is that there's like a popular revolution, the regime topples, we get something like a liberal democracy. But I mean, rarely has history ever worked out where like the best possible scenario is what happens. But it does seem actually possible that something like that may be about to happen, that there could be a revolution. But on the other, I'm not that old, and I can think of multiple times in recent history where there are mass protests in Iran. They usually end up being nothing. The regime brutally suppresses them. These seem bigger than most of them. So I hope that isn't the. So maybe there really is some chance for this one, but
yeah, I've heard reports of some pretty brutal oppression going on, slaughtering of citizens and stuff like that. It's hard, I think, to know exactly what's happening on the ground. I think they've cut the internet and stuff, so there's not a ton of information coming out, or at least not that I'm aware of. But I'm with you. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. I don't know if it's. And this begs the question, is like United States is focused on Greenland, the United States is focused on Venezuela, and here is a real opportunity for Iran to have a new non-absolute government. What country is going to come in and build a coalition to help them out, or is any country going to come in and build a coalition to help them out? And I don't necessarily see it happening right now. Walter, what's your take? Oh, hold on, Walter. You're not. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. The Iranian regime is already blaming America and Israel for fomenting these protests, being part of what is stirring them. And whether or not that's true, I do think it's in our interest, and it's something we've historically participated in, right? So it's kind of hard to tell the truth about America's involvement in Iran this time around. Are these three things happening simultaneously on purpose, or are they natural? Entirely natural. And I certainly, again, going back to your point, Jeff, is that we need to be going back to Congress for this, right? And that's what the Trump administration should be doing. I was just looking up, actually, and Denmark is a unitary parliamentary constitutional monarchy. That is a mouthful. But there is a king in the mix there, King Frederick X, I think. And so there may also just be some Trump kind of testing his maniacal monarchicism. That was not quite right. He may be distracted, and we may be missing an opportunity here. But I think it's also important, and I think one of Trump's strengths, kind of contra Fareed Zakaria's world view, is that I think people are tired of being lied to, right? And America is full of grown-ups. America is full of people who have open access to the internet and to all of these different spills of information that have happened. And so I think moving forward, if the Iranians can want a constitutional republic, that's amazing, right? Like if that genuinely is what comes out of this, that would just be absolutely a godsend. And if it can happen with a little bit of our nudging and them not blaming us and us not being to blame, it would truly be incredible. Because they are, let's be honest, they are the funnel for many dollars of terrorism. And the current regime thinks and believes that we are a great Satan, right? And so it's important that the ball be kept eye on, but again, like with congressional involvement, right, with the Senate in particular, and we're not seeing that from the administration, and so that's obviously the big concern and the thing that we keep going back to with uncapping the House and getting more oversight into at least on the back end of what's going on with these executive actions.
Yes. So go ahead, Roger.
I see one critical piece of one critical development now in the situation in Iran that hasn't been there in previous terms. It was kind of building up. They got no water, right? Their water table is running dry. They are actively talking about plans to move the capital from Tehran to some other place where there's water. If they can't, and but what I've heard is a large part of this has to do with mismanagement and corruption, right? If people don't have water, that's a serious problem. All the other philosophical, democratic, all these other thoughts don't mean shit. If you don't have food and you don't have water, that's all that matters. And if the leaders in Iran can't solve that, they're in big trouble.
Yeah, I would say water is pretty important. So let's talk a little bit about Venezuela. I know we talked about it on the show last week, but originally, the Trump administration said that Venezuela was about drug cartels and taking out a bad dictator. But now they're talking about oil companies. They're talking about how the new person in power is basically, agreed to follow suit. And as long as they listen, things will be okay. Otherwise, and I believe Trump said that even worse things will happen. Exerting that raw strength maybe for American interest as opposed to rules and institutions. And I think this is kind of the point that Fareed was trying to make. It's interesting how this took place. I sent this to Walter and Roger. Tyler, I forgot to send it to you, but Gabe Fleischer wrote a piece in Wake Up to Politics last week about this, where he described the coalition that kind of brought about the Venezuela special operations, and that included Marco Rubio and Stephen Miller, who basically were on opposite sides of, like, it's not that they were on opposite sides. They both wanted to do it, but for different reasons. Marco Rubio wanted to do it for, democratic reasons. Stephen Miller wanted to do it for power and American interests. But yet, because they were all able, to come together and say, at least we want to do this thing. It reminded me a little bit of, John Quincy Adams after the Andrew Jackson went in and took Florida. It was like, you know what? This isn't the worst thing in the world. We could use Florida. So, Tyler, I just wanted to get what do you think about that? What should the United States' role in Venezuela be going forward now that this has happened?
Yeah, I mean, so in general, I mean, I'll be very honest. When the invasion happened, or not the invasion, but the kind of capture of the dictator president, I was like, well, one less dictator. They'll to put the opposition into power, which won't be that hard because the opposition won the previous election, so they have like popular support. Which often in the cases of countries we've relatively recently attempted to establish a democracy in, they've not had that kind of popular support. So I thought this will be a very good thing. As you pointed out, this isn't what happened. We deposed a narco-terrorist president to put his narco-terrorist vice president in charge. Because the narco-terrorist vice president is going to do what Trump tells him. He's not going to be a Democrat with a small d, but he's going to do what the president tells him. And that turns out is probably all President Trump really cares about in general, perhaps anywhere. And so that to me seems a disappointment. I mean, America, the sort of the beautiful thing about America, I think, is in theory, it's a lot more than about raw power, as Stephen Miller sort of put it on the news in defense of our actions. We stand for something. This is just raw power. This doesn't really stand for anything. It doesn't improve the world all that much. It doesn't improve the lives of Venezuelans. And it probably doesn't even improve the lives of most Americans, except for making slightly cheaper gas.
Yeah, but I have two kids that turn 16 this year, so
I just drove 8 hours or 7 hours yesterday, so I get it. I mean, the cheaper gas would be nice.
I'm flying on a plane tomorrow, so I've got perhaps both of you beat my pumping of fuel. The other interesting thing I saw about Venezuela of these allegations of new weapon systems being tested by the U.S.
Oh yeah, that was big. Yeah. I did hear about that.
Yeah. So for listeners that haven't heard, sonic weapons, I think, basically auditorily debilitating, probably. Yeah, and it, people are bleeding from noses and vomiting, passing out. And the word on the street is that, like, you don't want to experience that. So maybe it will usher in some change in Cuba or Colombia, which, I mean, that would be interesting.
Yeah, now these new technologies, they remind me, I've been hearing reports of this type of technology for like 20 years now, but I've been hearing about it being used on Americans, specifically on different people that have been in Cuba. So I found it interesting that we had this and used it in this, Central America or, South American country. So,
yeah. Havana syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's what I was thinking of. So, all right. So some other big news, obviously, if we're not invading a country or taking out a dictator or, watching a revolution on the news, we also have this big immigration battle going on in our country right now. I don't know if you guys have paid attention to it. It seems to be a really big problem going on. And last weekend in Minneapolis, a American citizen was shot and killed. It was recorded. There was different videos released at different periods of time. Everybody's jumping to their side and, making their claims against or for whatever they believe in. I guess, what I want to get to here is how do we solve this problem? Like this, the INS is not going to solve this problem. We're not going to deport everybody, and the problem isn't going to go away. Whatever Trump is doing is just kicking the can down the road. We have to write real immigration policy. We have to come to some sort of agreement of who we want to be in this country, what it means to be an American, how you become an American. We got to create rules and structure and order. And right now we have almost none of that. And it's a political football that's constantly being kicked around, and people are getting hurt. There's videos every day about people, the brutality of these raids, if you will. But on the other side is like, there are people out there that are egging them on, right? And it's like, it's a tinderbox right now. Your people are begging for, violence at this point, and we've got to get to a point where we get past that and we say, okay, let's come together in Congress, let's write some rules, and let's move on. Go ahead, Roger. I see you want to go first.
I have to remind the assembled group yet once again, we had that in 2024, the bill that was written by Lankford that Trump spiked. He spiked it. He stopped it from happening then. So the fact that he's even able to fan the flames now, there would be lower flames, maybe no flames, if that legislation had passed. Donald Trump is responsible for this from A to Z, soup to nuts.
But Roger, you're missing the big point. If that would have passed, they might not needed to have elected him to solve the problem, because it would have already been solved.
I did not miss the point. I just didn't address it in my rant. Yeah, he clearly spiked it for a reason, and it turns out he knows Americans better than I do.
I don't know if he knows Americans better than you do. I would say that he knows how to pull on the emotional strings of people and push the right buttons of other people to create dysfunction and division, which lifts up his group.
Yeah, and how do you do that without knowing the people? You know what buttons to push. You know what strings to pull. He's deeper in the swamp than I ever have been and ever hope to be, and that's why he knows all this shit. He is the swamp. He's a swamp thing.
Yeah,
Remember
he
that guy
definitely
from the comics.
Yeah, he definitely is the Swamp Thing. Walter, go ahead.
Swamp Thing or Swamp King with a new ballroom?
Ooh, Swamp King. I like it. I like it. I got to get an AI video.
No king. No king. Do not use the word king in the same sentence with Donald Trump, or I will resign from this board. I will not.
Hold on. We're gonna get to it in the declaration when we get to the third segment. There is a point that actually could benefit us by making him king, and I'll get to that. I read Diane Allen's book on the Declaration, so we'll get to that. Go ahead, Walter.
We'll see.
My heart goes out to this woman's family, and frankly to the officer's family. I think both of them are caught in a horrible situation where it is very clear that everyone's got a lot of judgment to give, and at the end of the day, that's what a jury is for. That's why we have a jury system. We put faith in that jury system because it works. That's the least worst option, and that's where judgment lies, there and with the big man upstairs. And I agree with Eric Weinstein about this. It's like it was kind of inevitable, right? I mean, it seemed like, of course, at some point somebody was going to like push things a little too far, and somebody's going to get shot, and it's going to be bad because it's going to be a close call, and so people on both sides are going to be able to yell at each other really big, and surely everyone's going to pick it up either for the clicks or because somebody else wants them to. And it's I think it is important. Immigration is super important. I think that and Native Americans fundamentally are kind of what have shaped so much of our Supreme Court precedent and some of the problems therein. And I think we're about to get a lot more clarity, I think, is the good news from the Supreme Court on some of these immigration questions. And hopefully that's going to make things, a bit more orderly. I'm concerned about the Supreme Court's decision with respect to the National Guard use, because I think it's going to drive Trump to deploy active military, which he can do, and I don't. well, I don't want to see things get much worse before we uncap the House. I mean, let me just put it that way, right? I think every day things get worse. I just think, man, I hope we're one step closer to uncapping the House, because things could get spicy, and at the end of the day, the power of Congress is that they should be collecting taxes, and they should also be distributing them, right? That's the spending bill. And I think one of the spicy things I want to throw into the mix for an uncapped House is, what if that means the IRS is no longer an executive branch agency, but it's a legislative branch agency? And I wanted to drop that to see if the CPA had thoughts, but also Tyler and Jeff.
I would love for the IRS to not be under the control of a president, given what has happened here, and frankly, what he did in his first term. The Ways and Means Committee subpoenaed his tax records, and Mnuchin and Rettig, whatever his name was at the time, stonewalled the whole time. I read the statute. It's like 2 lines long. It's bright line stuff. There's no interpretation there. And they got away with it. I would love for the IRS to not be under the control, just like I don't want the Fed under the control of the executive. I don't want the IRS under the control of the executive either. And until the executive, until the person that heads the administration returns to the job of just administering the laws that were written for them, I would like to take as much as possible from the presidency and distribute it around, spread it out.
Tyler?
Including inspector generals.
I don't know. I've never thought about this idea of the IRS. I mean, so I'm enough of a Hamiltonian that I feel like the executive is better at executing than the legislature, which I love the legislature, but they're not ever the most efficient group in the world. On the other hand, how efficiently do I really want my taxes collected, perhaps? So I don't know. It's an intriguing idea. I kind of like the idea. I often think about, and I've never come to any conclusion about how Congress could be. I mean, obviously, I'm in favor of uncapping the House, but like, what other mechanisms could be sort of arranged for the committees to exert more, at least oversight, overtly over the president, if not more, maybe even executive function over the executive branch. I think it would take tinkering, but I like the idea in theory.
You have to hire more people. You have to hire more people.
So I've got a quick story. So this was prompted in part because, so recently I got a notice in the mail from the IRS, and this is the first notice I've received, and it says, "Hey, we've assigned a claim that we have against you to a collection agency." And I was like, "Oh my God! Like, what happened?" I sent it to my CPA, of course, and then I log in to figure out what this is about. It's $200 of quote unquote interest and penalty, which they didn't actually provide any information for, or relatively little information for. And I was like, okay, so the very first communication that I get is not from the actual IRS. It's from a depraved capitalist blood-sucking collection agency before they actually have a conversation with me. And I was like, if this was an opportunity for me to have a conversation with my congressional office, or run down there and give them a $200 check, right? Or go to my congressional office every April and hand them a $20,000 check, right? And say, hey, here is my $20,000, right? And associating, I think, just this the responsibility, right? That ultimately they are in charge of collecting our taxes, or writing the legislation to collect our money and then spend it. That is the primary authority of the legislative branch, and it's the primary power that they're supposed to have over the executive branch. And it's how you could control Trump, right? Is you could take away his budget for certain things, and I want to see it come back. So I want y'all to continue to think about putting the IRS under Congress, or at least a big chunk of it, right? A big chunk of the responsibility, and I think there might be legs here.
All right, so we started the conversation about immigration, and I wanted to make some parallels. I tweeted yesterday something that's not in the show is the whole Jerome Powell Fed chair situation.
God.
And basically we've got I think Donald Trump thinks he is Andrew Jackson at times, to be honest with you, with the way that he acts. I really do believe that. She left the door open. What a butt munch. And he the whole Venezuela thing or Greenland thing, it kind of screams a little bit of Polk or McKinley,
Mm-hmm.
And this immigration thing, I've made this point for quite some time that it's basically the slavery issue. It is the thing that is dividing the country into these different groups. It's creating this sectional divide, and it's breaking up all these different factions that have kind of held together for a really long period of time. And I'm reading The Impending Crisis, America Before the Civil War, 1848 to 1861 by David Potter. And this is the second book I've read recently on this. I read Robert Mary's Decade of Disunion, the 10 years leading up to the Civil War. And I want to read you this excerpt. This equivocation made the doctrine especially enticing to politicians, for it allowed, and they're talking about slavery here, it allowed Northern Democrats to promise their constituents that popular sovereignty would enable the pioneer legislatures to keep the territories free, while Southern Democrats could assure pro-slavery audiences that popular sovereignty would kill the Wilmot Proviso and would give slavery a chance to win a foothold before the question of slavery exclusion could arise at the end of the territorial period. Each wing of the party, of course, understood that what the other was up to, condoned it as a political expedient for getting Democrats elected, and hoped to impose its own interpretation after the elections were won. But 2 years beyond each election, there was always another election, and a clear confrontation of the meaning of popular sovereignty was repeatedly avoided. And so I guess the point that I'm making here is we have been talking about immigration for a really, really long time. And each party and each group is constantly kicking the football down, and they use it to win elections. And then there's another election 2 years later. And as Roger mentioned earlier in the segment, we're even spiking legislation that solves the problem so we can get elected. Tyler, I know that, you've studied a little bit of the antebellum period. I know you're a fan of John Quincy Adams, and he fought the gag rule and the slaveocracy. Do you see the parallels of the antebellum period leading up to where we are today?
Yeah, I think there are definite parallels. I think there are differences. Because slavery is in many ways much a worse thing by its nature, I think. But I do think it is true that this is like I think it's one of several. I don't know if it's sort of exclusive, but it's one of several kind of wedge issues that nobody's actually very interested in solving, because they all use it for their own electoral benefit. And I think what I find increasingly interesting is the more I dig into this, the more I discover this is like a centuries-long issue, immigration, and what immigration should look like in this country. William Seward is denied the Republican nomination in 1860 largely because he took a pro-immigrant stance in a Republican Party that didn't much care for immigrants. And Lincoln gets the nomination, not even because he disagrees with Seward, but because he lives in Illinois and never had to take a stance on the issue before. And so this is like a long, and in some ways it's kind of interesting. The parties are about where they somehow have ended up about where they were in the 1800s on this. The Democrats are pro-immigration, the Republicans are anti-immigration. Wasn't quite in the mid 20th century. Things became a little more balanced out there, but so it is like the slavery issue, that it's like the wedge issue of our time that both parties benefit from, kind of at the expense of America. But the real problem, and this is where the parallel with slavery remains accurate, but is most dangerous, is these wedge issues. A wedge drives things apart, and that's dangerous. It is a short-term gain for your party, but it is a long-term dangerous thing for the country. And we keep doing it. And that combined with the stagnant economy and all these other things, Trump's poll numbers are sinking, and Democrats are always so excited. Everybody hates Donald Trump, and I'm not going to give great. I don't like him either. But nobody really likes the Democrats either. So what does that do for? I mean, that's actually when you're at your most unstable and dangerous as a country in a lot of ways, is when both sides are seen as awful and corrupt, and you've driven the people so far apart they don't like anybody. And I
Right.
think we're very close to getting there.
And I want to. You mentioned it is like the immigration issue kind of happened right at the beginning of the Civil War, like right around that time period, the end of the antebellum period. Immigration started to rise, and Democrats were more pro-immigration. However, they also used immigrants to win power. They bribed and manipulated them, okay, to gain office.
They're
Obviously,
pro-immigration for the worst, like the most cynical reasons
exactly.
possible.
Right.
And Republicans are anti-immigration for the most cynical reasons possible because they vote for Democrats.
Right. And I would argue that the part of the reason that the House got capped was because of immigration. Because we couldn't come to an agreement on the rules and the numbers and all these things, there was a battle over immigration. One of the biggest arguments during the apportionment debates in the 1920s was over who should be counted for purposes of apportionment. Should it be all people or all citizens? And this is something that we are literally having this conversation now. The Trump administration in the first Trump administration tried to get it added to the census. He was unsuccessful, and now he's gone full out enforcement. He's just removing anybody he thinks is illegal, and again, we're not solving the root of the problem. We're not talking about the root of the problem. And as you mentioned, both parties are kind of not likable. And I forgot his name, but the mayor of Minneapolis was on all of the talk shows this weekend. Jacob Fry. And he is just a really bad representative for Democrats out there. And he's out there just antagonizing and gaining probably popularity and celebrity off of this very tragic incident that happened in his city. And he's, pointing fingers and not taking accountability for his own actions. And I think, like you said, it's dangerous in the fact that this wedge is short-term gain. Jacob Fry, people know his name now. I didn't remember his name, but people know his name now. He's got some short-term gain. But what he's doing out there is he's continually hitting that hammer of that wedge in between Americans. And what he should be doing is working with his members of his, constitutional representatives and saying, we got to get a handle on this immigration problem. We need some real rules and laws. Congress needs to act on this problem.
And, I keep hearing one of the reasons Democrats as a party are not popular is because people say they're not seen doing enough. If Jacob Fry is sitting in a room somewhere with representatives, he's not seen doing anything. He's performing for his base, standing up to Trump. He may be doing the other stuff out of eyesight. Maybe he is sitting with Tina Smith, or the only member of the House I can think of from Minnesota is Tom Emmer, and he's definitely not sitting with Tom Emmer. but
that would be impressive if he was.
If he was. He may be doing this other stuff out of sight. We don't see it. He's performing for his base because his base is out there saying, Democrats, you're not doing anything. Well, he's doing something. It's ineffective, but it's something, and people see it.
Yeah, I think the most dangerous thing you can do as a leader is let the people you're leading tell you what to do. But, that's just me.
Well, then let's flip it around. What do you think he should say from the podium? When he's addressing a murder that he sees as a murder, I see it as a murder too, that took place in his city by federal agents. They take the car away without even wrapping the damn thing up to preserve evidence. They're not going to do an investigation. What response do you think would have been appropriate for Mayor Fry to say from the podium?
So to be fair, I didn't watch him at the podium. I watched him on the news shows. So just as an FYI,
I saw clips of him at the podium. I didn't watch the whole thing either. I don't have that kind of time.
But what I would say is I would say something similar to what I've said tonight is like, America, we've got to get a handle on this problem. Congress, you need to act on this. This is your state government. And he did say something about the fact, or no, it was a different report that I saw. I think Trump is sending in like 1,000 agents to Minneapolis now, and they're calling it an invasion, right? You know, hey, instead of creating more of a battle between the federal government and the state governments, let's start to work together to solve this problem. I've made the point about immigration. It needs to be a state and federal collaboration. There needs to be federal rules, but the states need to have some sort of say in it. Part of the problem with immigration is some states want more immigrants than other states. We've always, almost historically, always selectively let in certain groups over other groups. And we're probably going to continue to do that, but we should allow the states to say who comes in, where they come in. Part of the issue that we have is these sanctuary cities, you know, started way back in the 1980s. They started to undermine the rule of law. They started to incentivize breaking the rules to get what you wanted. And that's where the wedge really started. And that's why we've had such a problem in this. But at the same time, you know, certain cities need people to grow. As we go to the Declaration, as we move on here, one of our gripes was the fact that the king was stopping our ability to bring in immigrants or write our own naturalization laws, because we understood that as a thriving country, we wanted to grow our population because population makes you strong and stable. And I think that different states might want some, and then other states like Texas or border states, they might want less because they feel like they're already being overrun.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to hear your prescription for what Fry should have said instead of what he said. I mean, is he supposed to stand at the podium and say all of that stuff to the people?
I mean,
That's
I wasn't.
my point, Jeff.
Well, but look, he got up there and he cursed. Okay, he said the F word. Okay, I don't think that is what he should be saying, right? Like, point the direction where it needs to go at Congress. He's pointing the finger at the president, but he needs to point the finger at Congress. Okay,
Did
like
Congress
if you're gonna
did Congress send ICE to his city?
No, but Congress's failure to act for the last 30 years is why ICE is in his city.
Yes.
And if he can't recognize
Absolutely.
that, he has no business being on the podium to start with.
He recognizes it, but that's not going to satisfy his base.
I don't care about his base. I care about solving the problem. Uncap the House.
So do I. But we're not elected people. That's maybe why you didn't win your election. Why I haven't run. Right? We're not those kind of people.
True that.
Move on. That's enough arguing.
All right. Walter, Tyler, you want to jump in here? No.
I guess I'll say, I'm sympathetic to both of you. I mean, I think, today was the first day of the semester, and I'm not going to go through the whole story, but I was showing some students Robert Kennedy's kind of response to the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. And I thought to myself, it's a really sort of moving thing about sort of like learning to get along as a country and sort of loving one another and so on. And I thought, is this like the appropriate response to what's happened in Minneapolis? It's like, it actually isn't, because the problem in Minneapolis is like there's this large contingent of the country, much larger, I think there was probably a larger contingent of the country right now who sees no problem with what happened in Minneapolis than the contingent of people who thought there was nothing wrong with the assassination of MLK. And on the other hand, there's like a federal government that's like actively pouring oil on the fire. So I'm sympathetic to like the mayor, like sending 10,000 more agents in is like not helping his situation at home in some ways. And I think like telling his people to calm down probably actually makes it harder for him to lead them. Because his people are not in a mood to calm down, and telling them to will only make them even angrier at him, not just at the president. On the flip side, it would be nice to think, and I don't know if it's the case, that he's got some sort of master strategy where he's like slowly kind of leading them to where they need to go, which is like a more thoughtful outlet for their anger. I mean, this is like the Lincolnian or the Franklin Roosevelt genius where you look like you're just with public opinion, but you're kind of in this very subtle, sneaky way getting it to where it needs to be. But that's one of those things that's impossible to tell. in the moment if that's what he's doing, and all we can do is just hope that's what he's doing. And then some people, maybe like Jeff, the Charles Sumners of the world, have to make them be as honest as they can.
So hold on, I take offense. I am not Charles Sumner. All right.
No,
All
no.
right.
So I doubt you're Charles Sumner in very many things. I just meant he was a much more sort of shameless moralist about his politics than Lincoln was.
Yeah, I just want people to I'm just really kind of frustrated with. I watched that guy on an interview, 3 or 4 interviews, and I don't think there's anything going on behind the scenes. I mean, he struggled just to stay focused on the camera or in the conversation at a whole, kept on sidetracking. I just don't think that he should have been on camera, right? I wasn't talking about the podium thing, but you're not helping your case because now you're talking to a national audience. You're not talking to Minneapolis, right? At the podium, you're talking to Minneapolis, right? You do local media's there. But when you're going on, you're doing national shows, you've entered a different arena. And if you're going to enter that arena, you need to have something more valuable to say about the national issue other than, I get your point about his people are angry. He's got to lead those people. That's one thing. But there's this whole other issue that he could have stepped in. He could have had that Lincoln-esque FDR type of moment, and I just don't think that he did. And I don't think he was prepared for it. Walter, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that this comes to a tweet that or a post that I made in response to Jonah Goldberg, where he was railing on Trump, right, and all the horrible things that Trump was doing, which is great, but the point I made was being conservative has to mean something other than being against Trump. It does need to be for something, and that maybe there's this moral imperative for people who want to reshape the post-Trump Republican Party or just post-Trump America, that we have to be focused on a solution, and that if you're going to complain about something in the next breath or in the same breath, you have a moral obligation to point to the solution, which is to uncap the House, right? And if you're not doing that, you're not really doing political punditry in a serious way where you actually care about our country, because there's a broad consensus amongst a number of people. And so I think maybe Jeff's point is that the mayor of Minneapolis should know this, right, and needs to, if he wants the Democratic Party to uncap the House and beat the Republicans to that goal, then he's got to jump on board and same to Jonah Goldberg, right? I mean,
Jonah knows about uncapping the House. He's written about it. He's talked about it.
To Fry and have him join our
of
group. He
course.
needs to sign the declaration.
Yeah, he has, and I thank him for speaking about it. But it's got to be more. I mean, I get this is just I to all the people that are serious about politics. This is the solution upon which all other solutions are born. This is the reform upon which all other potential reforms, including reforms, conservative reforms, right, or progressive reforms. It is view agnostic. It is about getting a better representation of the American sentiment, so that we can resolve these issues. Be it foreign policy questions, which that again, when you have the power of the purse, that's a lot of power. It really does help solve a lot of these issues, and it certainly helps solve the issue of foreign agents coming into states. Well, if the people were in charge, there's again the power of the purse, the power of impeachment. These powers that Congress has, but has just totally wasted away, are there for the taking. All they have to do is pick them up. So, I mean, that's every time I see something, be it a wedge issue or the foreign policy issues, right? It's just man, uncapping the House is the solution to each one of these woes. I mean, and how many times are we going to have to beat that drum? I guess, 10,000 more, that's fine. Let's go.
Yeah, my phrase practiced thousands of times is no matter what particular governmental reform you support, your odds of success improve when we uncap the House, because we marginalize the extremists and allow serious people to get to work.
All right, let's get to the last segment. I asked you guys to reread the Declaration of Independence. It's only 1,300 words, so I hope you were able to do that. So I want to go around the horn.
I missed this note.
You did? Are you kidding? It was the third segment.
Well, I thought you said we're going to talk about the Declaration. I didn't say go reread it.
Didn't I say that? I don't know. I mean, if you're going to talk about it, wouldn't you just reread it anyways?
I mean, no.
All right. Well, some of us read the Declaration like monthly, but whatever. I think Walter froze. Are you there, Walter? Oh, well, Walter gets to go last. He's probably like reading it. There he is. Are you back?
I am back, but y'all froze like right when I said I'm going to go read it.
Okay. All right. Well, Tyler, let's start with you. What, I assume you reread it sometime within the last 24 hours, hopefully, maybe, or did I not?
I didn't, but I confess I teach it more than any other document.
Okay.
Teach it like
what does it mean?
Times a semester. So this is just.
All right. What does it mean to you today?
The beginning. I don't know. And so I say kind of like, what does it mean to me today? That's a good question. That's a really good question, saying how often I teach it. So I should maybe be thinking about this more. I mean, I'll say what occurs to me again and again as I kind of teach it is like I think, and I'm sympathetic to this because like whatever my politics are aside, I have like a more conservative disposition, I suppose you could say. Like I'm not a revolutionary. I don't like change. I'm not always like gunning for the next great big reform I can dream up. Yeah, the Declaration of Independence is like one of the most radical and beautiful things I've ever read. And every time I read it, I'm kind of reminded of this because it cuts against, I think, so much of human instinct, which is to like think some groups are better than other groups, to think some people are better than other people. And I'm not talking like I think some races are better than other people. I'm talking like to think like some people are better than other people because of, they're better at ruling or something like this. The Declaration of Independence is like based on this very simple fundamental truth that everybody is equally entitled to rule themselves. And that is an incredibly radical notion because it tosses out, forget whether everybody's equally good at it, forget whether everybody is equally willing to do it, forget whether everybody has this equal right, and all the rights kind of begin there. And so the one thing the radicalness strikes me, but then the thing that sort of speaks out to me today that I think my students so often kind of miss, that I think we're bad to miss as society, is this is a really kind of awesome responsibility. If everybody has an equal right to rule, to govern, then that means we all govern, if it's a good government. And that's not like an easy thing. Anybody who's ever been in charge of anything, kids, a classroom, a road trip, whatever, they know a group project in college. Even the littlest thing, it's stressful and hard. And the Declaration teaches that like the citizens of a country rule the country. That's a really kind of big, scary thing. And I think I wish more people kind of thought of themselves as rulers in an interesting way. I think we think of ruling as a kind of, when we think of it, we think of like Emperor Palpatine or Napoleon or something. But I wish we thought of ourselves not just as citizens, but as rulers of our country a little bit more often.
I like that. Roger.
There's a line that fits in with what he said from the movie The American President, Michael Douglas. It's either he or Michael J. Fox. Yeah, great movie. One of the two uses the phrase advanced citizenship, talking about American politics. And this is advanced citizenship. This is hard stuff. And I agree with what you said. Now, I did take time to reread the Declaration of Independence. And I pulled out a few quotes I'd like to regurgitate here. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind. Does Donald Trump give a damn about anyone's opinion of him? I think he probably secretly does. You hear some stories about him, at night, worried about his legacy and his mortality, blah, blah, blah. But when he stands up to the world, he doesn't give a damn about anybody's opinion. All right. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shewn that mankind are more disposed to suffer. Trump is attempting wholesale change, and for the light reasons, in my opinion. There aren't good reasons for most of the crap he's trying to do. All right. Any discussion, or shall I continue?
No, go ahead.
All right. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, their duty, to provide for new government. Abuses, usurpations, like daily, right? It's something as simple as usurping the Kennedy Center, usurping the chairmanship of the Kennedy Center, right? Abuses and usurpations are going on all the time. Let's see, got another one here. He has, these are from the list of indictments against George. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. Well, Trump doesn't like law. He chooses not to assent to them unless he has no real choice. Let's see.
So I want to point out here that you got upset that I called him King Swamp, but you have put Trump in the king's position for the Declaration of Independence, by the way, which, by the way, was Diane Allen's argument that the reason that the Jefferson and the writers they purposely chose the king because A, they wanted support in Parliament, which they did have some support in Parliament, by the way. Mm-hmm. And B, it just made it easier. It just made it easier to have one really bad guy to unite other people around than to have this.
So we call him a tyrant, not a king. He is not a king. He will never be a king. I will never address or accept the word king with Donald Trump. Call him a tyrant. Call him a dictator. Call him an authoritarian. Call him president. Call
Isn't
him
that
any
what
of
a-
those things?
All right.
Right?
Do you have more? Or you want Walter? Go ahead.
Well, no. Just a quick aside. It's funny that you say this because the No Kings protest kind of is by implication saying Trump is a king. Or
It's
he
saying
wants
we
to
will
be,
not
right?
allow him to be king.
Yeah,
it's
we will
saying
not
we
allow
will
it.
not allow him.
But-
You misunderstand it completely. You
I
need
know,
to
no, I
go to
know.
one, go to the streets and talk to the people there, and you'll have a better understanding.
I mean, I think I understand. I think the other thing is it's really no kings in America because we do accept the king of Denmark. So
Hey, there's lots of constitutional monarchs around in lesser European capitals. He's refused to pass laws for the accommodation of large districts of people. Right? He's targeting blue state, the states that were carried, that Harris carried. He's targeting with all kinds of stuff. Let's see. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners. Again, the Lankford bill that he spiked back in 2024. There, it fits right in with that description. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws. All right, the odds of this cat that did the murder in Minneapolis being tried in a fair court, I don't know. I'm skeptical. I don't think that guy's going to ever see justice. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat them out of their substance. Okay, he's not sending them into your kitchen, but he is sending swarms of people to harass.
All right. Okay. So hold on. But what does it mean to you today? What when you read that document, like, I mean, I think it's one of the most beautiful documents ever written. And it really, it triggers something in me that is both, kind of like what Tyler was talking about is like, I really don't like change. I'm not really a big revolutionary guy. I'm typically like, I like the status quo. I like to be comfortable.
Yes, you're a
but
conservative. Yes.
There's something about this document that really speaks to me. And the fact that if it's like, like Tyler said, it's about responsibility. It's about living up to what you believe in. What do you get when you read that today, other than Donald Trump is a bad guy?
No, we have, it's not about Trump. It's about anybody, any despot, right? It could be in another country. It could be our country, wherever. The objective of this is to say, we will not tolerate that kind of behavior in America. We declare we are independent of people who engage in that kind of behavior. But now we're not really independent of people who engage in that behavior. We've got one in the White House. So I'm doing this like applied history, right? This document was what it was at the time, and it served a good purpose. It lives on because of the beauty of the structure and the language and the sentiments and all that stuff. But it's still a bill of indictment against a tyrant who's doing these same things now. If the document says we have the responsibility to throw off oppressive government, why are we just going to sit and read it? So, wow, that's a beautiful sentence. We'll let the government stay in place. We just love this sentence.
Well, so, and I want to get to Walter here in a second, but what I'll say is like the difference between that and this, or then and now, is we had no representation in Parliament. We could not write any rules. We had no people that had any real power. We do have a Congress that can write rules. They can impeach the president. They can pass veto-proof legislation. They can uncap the House, and they don't. And we can sit here and we can point the finger at Donald Trump all day long, but that's just another wedge. That's just another distraction. We've got to focus on Congress. We've got to put pressure on Congress to act because they have power and they have our power. They have our power to handcuff that guy that you don't like, that a lot of people don't like, and they're not using it. And that power was vested into them by the people that wrote the Declaration and wrote the Constitution. Walter, go ahead.
I see in the Declaration of Independence a promise, but a promise baked in hypocrisy, or in conundrum, in perplexity. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, period. Now, at the end of the list of grievances, the final wage of grievance is the following: that King George has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. So, I think it is simultaneously beautiful, but there's obviously also this inherent contradiction. We're saying all men are created equal, and yet in the same document, calling the people who are currently there, who, by the way, sided with the British, right? I mean, I think this is an important piece here, is, the British and the Americans were fighting for the alliance of certain Indian tribes, and most of them allied with the British because the Indians thought that naturally the British were going to win. And so I bring this up for a couple reasons. One is that there's work to do, and so although I am a conservative, and specifically, I think in my originalist interpretation of the Constitution, I believe that is the method by which we should interpret it. That combined with, I think, my moral values in some ways makes me conservative. But when you look at this document, when you look at the inherent contradiction, right? I think you have to ask yourself, what does that mean? It's something we have to legislate through. It's something we need to amend this document through, right? This is the purpose of amendment, is to address things like this. The other reason I bring this up is because if you look at sovereign territories within our country, or quasi-sovereign dependents, as the Supreme Court has called them, or dependent nations, what you see is failure, right? It is clear that America is not very good at having a great relationship with a conquered people, right? We have not figured that out. We have in some situations. There are certain situations where it's worked out a little bit better than others, but by and large, especially in the tribal areas around me, it's been a failure. And I think you see that in our foreign policy, right? We have not been very good at conquering people and then giving them a great representative government like we have. And I think part of that is because we've struggled to fulfill the promise of the contradiction of this document. Right? The contradiction of the document means we have to continue to work hard, right, to refine ourselves, see where we've started, and see the vision, right, with all of its problems, all of its warts, and do better. Right? The promise is that we can do better, that natural law allows us to do better, but we have to lead by example, I think. by correcting our past wrongs, acknowledging our past wrongs, and moving forward. And so that's what I see.
So I want to recommend this book to you, Our Declaration by Danielle Allen, who, by the way, supports uncapping the House. She's written about it in the Washington Post. We should really get her on the show. She does an excellent job laying out the Declaration, and she talks exactly about what you're just describing, the contradiction. Specifically, she tells a personal story. She is of mixed race. I believe her mother, her mother was white, her father was black, or vice versa. I apologize for forgetting. And she had a grandmother who was very hostile towards her because of her race. And these were open conversations that she had growing up about does it mean all people? Does it mean just white men? What does it mean today versus what does it mean then? And so I highly recommend reading the book for that. The second thing is that period that you mentioned after happiness is incorrect. It's not, that's an error on the website that you're reading it from. It's actually supposed to be a semicolon. And that whole, the sentence doesn't end. It's like 6 lines or something like that. She goes into that as well. And she contacted them about that. I don't have the full story because I wasn't prepared for that, but that's an interesting story there. It's in the book. But I want to get to, I'm going to get to what I take out of it is she talks about independence and go ahead.
Sorry, I got to add one thing before we get to your cap on this.
Go ahead.
The very next paragraph is that in every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. And our repeated petitions have been unanswered only by repeated injury. Anyway, and so I point that out, this idea of a petition. This is something I'm going to be bringing up today, but also in future shows. What does that mean? What does it mean to petition your government for a redress of grievances? And is there a different petition for each branch of government is the particular question I want to get to. So just a plug, and go ahead, Jeff.
All right. So she talks about the document basically lays out, it's about independence and equality. And Tyler kind of talked about it already as well. It's not that we are all equal per se, but we all have equal rights. We have equal abilities to govern ourselves. And she says that, the key is having equal access to the tools of government. And I think, based on this document and, what I've studied, is the tool of government that we need to have equal access to is our representatives. And right now that we don't. And I'm going to read this portion here. It says, once we see this, and if we look closely again at our list of complaints, we quickly realize that grievance 3 is not only one that provides evidence that King George was undermining rule by the people. In fact, grievances 4, 5, and 6 also. Grievance 4, he has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purposes of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. I cannot think of something that applies as well to today as that does right there. I mean, just think of the size of your district. As it was brought up earlier in the show, I had an unsuccessful run for Congress a few years back. And part of the reason that it was unsuccessful was this is a really big district. It's really hard to drive from one point of the district to the other point of the district. Just imagine being a voter. Just imagine being a citizen trying to get in touch with your representative, trying to get it's fatiguing, right? He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions of the rights of the people. And I just think that, you look at Speaker Johnson, shutting down Congress to avoid the whole Epstein thing, our access to the most important tool of government, which is our representatives, has been completely undermined. And the document is about self-government. It's about representation. It is in, where is it? Let me find the actual. He has refused to pass laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature. I would argue that we have a right to representation. We've mentioned it on the show numerous times. The First Amendment to the Bill of Rights, or the First Amendment to the Constitution, was supposed to be a right of representation that would fix the ratio of representative to citizens, and we didn't get it. Since then, the population has ballooned. We capped the House in 1929, and our right of representation has been completely diluted, and therefore we don't have equal access to government. We don't have equal access to the tools of government. Now, the people that have access are the people that live in proximity, that have wealth, that have interest, and regular everyday citizens just don't have that anymore. All right, that's my take on the Declaration. Yays, nays, anything in rebuttal there? Roger, you want to continue on with your Trump rant?
Well, there's just a couple more. For cutting off trade with the parts of the world, not exactly cutting it off, but the tariffs fit in there. Depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, cover up of the ICE agent who did the killing, and I would argue by all his machinations to weasel out of the federal cases prior to the 2024 election. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. I think he's trying to fundamentally change the structure of the government now in a way that's not necessarily agreeable to all the people. He's excited domestic insurrections amongst us. No editorializing needed there. Then the last thing was Prince, whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant, is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Oh yeah, there's one more. Our sacred honor. At the end of it, they pledge their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. Honor is in short supply among our elected government officials in this day and age. Not just now, but over the past decade or two.
Yeah. Tyler, any additional thoughts about the Declaration?
No, I mean, I feel like we've covered it from a variety of angles, because it's an oddly rich document. I think sorry, the cat is being very clingy because I just got back from a trip, but I think there's this misnomer. It's a short document, so you can read it and you can understand it very quickly. And I don't think that's really true. I think there's a lot of cool, fascinating hidden layers. It's distilling much of the best of Western political thought up to that point, and in some cases since, in a pretty short text. To get everything that's in that document, you'd have to read a lot of other books. But you could also just read that document. And in the Danielle Allen book, which Jeff has been recommending, which is great, she says at the beginning, if I'm remembering it correctly, the introduction, that one of the reasons she fell in love with the document is she was teaching an adult class at the U Chicago to sort of people with jobs and lives who, you can't assign Plato's Republic because it's huge. You have to do short documents you can kind of read all in class. And she says, so I signed the Declaration because it was short. And I thought, well, it's not probably that good, but it's short or something like this. And she was amazed by how rich and complicated it was and how much her students loved going through it. So,
yeah,
I would argue anything still read 200 and plus years later is worth reading, right? I just downloaded War and Peace to listen to an audiobook, 59 hours. I've never read it, so I'm looking forward to that.
That is a commitment of an audiobook.
Yeah, well, I use them on road trips a lot. Right now, I'm listening.
Oh yeah, I was listening to not War and Peace, I confess, but just listening to an audiobook. This is probably why I kept bringing up Sumner. I'm listening to Gore Vidal's Lincoln, which is a surprisingly good book. I didn't think I'd like it, but
yeah, I'm listening to John Irving's new novel, Queen Esther. I'm a big John Irving fan. And he's going through all his old hits. If you read Irving, you'll not be surprised. There's wrestling, there's Vienna, there's New Hampshire, there's weird sex. There's all the stuff he puts in all his books, just different arrangements.
All right. So I did I love that. I love the opening of Alan's book. I thought that was fantastic, the way that she described, how she came to write this book, and teaching the students about the night students. She made the point. She's like, she learned as much from them almost as she was teaching to them, because of the different perspectives that they had. I highly, highly recommend the book. Everybody should go out there and read it. And when you do, you can't help but walk away with the fact that it's about self-government, and that self-government is found in representation, and we should uncap the House.
Here's a question. Jeff and Walter, you're further down the road of setting up your juntos? Is that what they're called?
They're just, I call mine's a town hall. Mine's a town hall. His is a debate
Right.
hall, right?
It's called the First Friday Club. Stop trying to
Discussing the
define what I'm doing.
Declaration. Yeah, discussing the Declaration would be a good thing to have the centerpiece of one of those meetings, specifically because the person who knows the most can still learn from the others, because all these citizens have heard of it. They've been steeped in it all their lives. That would be a great thing to get conversation going, I think.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like it. All right. Well, we've come to the end of our show. I really appreciate Tyler being here. Let's go around the horn. Final words from anybody. You can talk about anything you want, make a plug for yourself, or hit something that you didn't get into the show. Walter, I'll start with you.
Thanks everyone for being here. Go check out the website, y435.org. You can see a couple of our new board members that are up there, and find old shows, make a donation. We should have our C3 status here shortly. As soon as we do, we will let you know. And stay in touch. I look forward to seeing how Jeff's town hall tavern town hall goes. And I believe that my First Friday is going to get pushed back a month, because the Laramie Library remains closed and under renovation, unfortunately. I've got to call in with a new place for us to relocate to, and if it doesn't work there, it will be at our house. And the other really big news is my wife and I are pregnant with a baby girl. So we're due July.
Congratulations.
12th. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, congratulations and condolences. A little of both are in order, because the life you used to lead is now over. So you need to grieve that for a minute before you start your new life.
Yeah, and you have to get rid of all your nice clothes.
That's right. I've got like these cloths. Yeah, there we go. No, I'll have a proper burping cloth. Did you not have burping cloths, Jeff?
I mean, I had them, but just wait till you have kids. You'll understand what I mean. All right. Roger, why don't you go next there, buddy?
Yes, it is my view that one piece of legislation, the Reapportionment Act of 1929, is the root cause of a fair portion of the dysfunction we see in Washington, D.C. today. And it extends into a lot of spheres and a lot of reasons. But I always have to come back to the point that if it were not for the capped House keeping the Electoral College from growing, it is highly unlikely that Trump would have ever won the Electoral College in 2016. And it is therefore, I would say, likely we would not be saddled with him today. So I think the Reapportionment Act of 1929 is directly responsible in some measure for giving us a person like Trump. If it hadn't been Trump, it would have been somebody else. This is the predictable result of capping the House and having a static legislature in a growing and dynamic society.
Tyler, final words?
Maybe it's because it's been a long day for me, but I don't have anything real deep. Thank you all for having me. This has been wonderful. And I guess I will say it's wonderful to sort of spend time with and talk to people who think about representation and take it very seriously. I spent much of my day attempting to impress upon students the importance of thinking deeply about politics. And You don't care about representation, I think, unless you think deeply about politics, which we should all be doing. So.
Awesome. I appreciate you coming on the show. Roger spurred something. You ever watch the show? It's a Bobby Flay show. It's called Titans. He gets these 3 really famous chefs, and then they go up against one chef. They cook in 3 different rounds, and it's a cooking competition. And there's this guy, Michael Fataggio. He's very highly skilled, but he's he's an X factor because he does some really crazy things. And he was cooking in the final round, and he's pushing up against his time, and he was struggling with the meat grinder, and he was taking it apart, and his team's getting nervous. And all of a sudden, he took the meat out, and he took dry ice, and he threw dry ice in the meat. And the reason he did that was because the meat was too cold, so it was gumming up in the meat grinder. And the other 2 teammates were like, I wouldn't even thought of that. I would have never even thought of that. He understood the root cause of his problem. The problem was not the meat grinder, even though it was getting clogged in the meat grinder. It wasn't a problem with the meat grinder itself. The problem was with the temperature of the meat. So instead of wasting all his time trying to fix the grinder, he changed the temperature of his meat, and it worked almost immediately. And that is the point. The root cause of our problems is the fact that we don't have enough representation. We're not able to govern ourselves. And instead of fighting about everything else or driving wedges, we got to stay focused on the root cause of our problem and uncap the house. And if you want to help us, you can go to our website, www.y435.org. You can sign up to volunteer. You can sign our Declaration for Representation,
Please.
or you can make a donation. So, Tyler, thank you so much for being on the show. And to everybody, we'll see you next week. Peace, love, and representation.
Ciao.